Super Mario Galaxy is some of the most whimsical and imaginative locations ever put into a video game. But have you ever wondered how long you could last if you actually had to live in any of them? I don't mean as Mario, I mean how long you could last, like as a human in a survival situation. Well, wonder no longer, because I have spent the last 2 months going through every single level in Super Mario Galaxy, and I've ranked them based on not only how long your average human can live with them, but also how well you can live in them. Now, I know at first glance you might think that living in space would be simple. After all, there's not a whole lot getting in your way up there out in the void, but things aren't always as they appear. Just take a look at Good Egg Galaxy. Right off the bat, 2 of the 3 words in the title are complete and total lies. First off, this is not a galaxy at all. It's not even a measly solar system. It is but a mere series of asteroids in orbit around a larger planet. It's actually the case for every single galaxy in this game. There are no galaxies in Super Mario Galaxy. I mean, except for the one that all the levels are collectively inside of together, but you get what I mean. And second, this egg isn't good at all. One little tap and it immediately tries to kill us. That is a bad egg, a very bad egg. But this guy's the least of our concerns as far as survival goes. Because before we can go off stomping babies like Super Mario, we need to make sure we can actually find a way to survive in this place first. I'm going to be starting off this and every other level in Super Mario Galaxy in the exact same place Mario spawns in and figure out how long a normal human could last via a special process I like to call kind of just eyeballing things and making assumptions about how it's all going to work out for us. Now, I have no idea how many of you watching this know this, but humans actually have a few basic needs that need to be met in order for them to survive. First, they need to find water, lest they die of dehydration within 72 hours. Second, food, without which a healthy human will starve to death in about a month or 2. And finally, we need to locate shelter to keep us safe while we sleep if there are any hostile creatures or hazardous environments that threaten us. You know, like the vacuum of space. Good news, I don't think Mario ever actually goes into the actual vacuum of space in this game, and I can prove this. See, when Mario goes underwater, he gets an air meter indicating that he can't breathe. But walking around here, no meter, meaning no breathing problems. Plus, you know, we can see him breathing if you just leave him sitting there long enough, so no need to worry about the air here. As far as I can tell, there's plenty. But despite there being plenty of creatures walking around that we could conceivably sink our teeth into when we're hungry, and plenty of shelter to hide ourselves from them when we're asleep, Good Egg Galaxy has not a single drop of water. At least not water that we can drink, that is. If you look off into the distance, you can actually see 5 planetoids that consist of almost entirely water, but so long as they're out of reach, we're doomed all the same. Hell, after staring at these things for 3 days while slowly dying of thirst, you might even wish that these little wet bastard balls didn't even exist at all, just floating up there, taunting us while we suffer. Spoilers, this is going to be a running theme in this video. Due to the fragmented nature in Super Mario Galaxy, a lot of galaxies are actually going to have all the ingredients you need in order to survive, but there's usually just one thing that you desperately need that's way out of reach. So we're going to be dying a lot due to bad luck and where we're spawning in. Hell, and other times, there's literally nothing to support human life whatsoever. Just take a look at Flip Switch Galaxy next door. It's just a bunch of goofy buttons in space with a fucking black hole in the middle of them. There is no food. There is no water. I'm not even sure what the purpose of all these switches is supposed to be. All that matters to us, though, is that we're going to be dead of dehydration within 72 hours. But not every level in this game has to be as dire as these two. Just take a look at Honeyhive Galaxy. Wild animals to eat, unlimited fresh water to drink, and a nice little overpass for us to sleep under. Everything we need for the quintessential homeless experience. However, there's still a few problems that need to be addressed. Now, the enemies here are actually pretty good food sources. Bugs are high in protein, piranha plants got those fat liquors for us to indulge ourselves in, and these guys, I don't know what they are, but you know what? I'm not a picky eater. One of these will probably make for a pretty good meal. The problem? Not a single one of these enemies will respawn after you kill them, meaning once we kill and eat them, that's it. We're not going to be getting any more, and we're eventually going to be left with nothing to eat but honey. Now, the good thing about the honey is that we're never going to run out. Since the bees produce the honey, it's safe to assume that it'll replenish over time, and even if they did just stop making it today, I frankly don't think I could ever eat this much honey in a lifetime, so we probably have enough. Plus, honey is one of the few foods that never spoils when properly stored. You know, like on the fucking ground outside. I mean, I'm sure they left it here for a reason. And who am I to judge the cultural traditions of bees? So this is probably fine. Downside, honey is not exactly healthy for you. And since honey is a real life thing that you can go out and put in your mouth right now, we can actually determine just how bad for us it really is. Now, the biggest problem with honey is that while it's calorie dense, it is not nutrient dense. So we're going to need to eat a lot of it to get our basic nutrition. Honey has about 0.1 grams of protein in every tablespoon serving. You need about 50 grams of protein every single day in order to survive. So not even considering every other nutrient, you need to eat about 500 tablespoons of honey every single day to meet your health needs. That is about 32,000 calories worth of the stuff. Look, the human body simply isn't built to handle that. You would give yourself type 2 diabetes by the end of the week if you even tried. The honey will give us energy, but once we run out of proper sources of protein, we're going to die of malnutrition within a couple months. So, how much protein do we have here? First, we'll need to determine how many enemies we actually have access to. Now, these piranha plants are easy enough to get to from where we'll be spawning in, but most of these enemies are going to be behind these cliffs. And I mean, if you can do a triple jump 20 feet into the air, let me know, but I will not be doing that. Fortunately, this is where one of the game developers' thinly disguised fetishes comes into play. The bee suit. Eat one of these bad boys and we gain the ability to fly for short periods of time, allowing us to access a lot of extra places, including this tunnel with all these little beetles running around. Side note, I always assume that these power-ups used all of their energy, transmogrifying us into different organisms, so I'm just going to assume they don't give us any extra nutrition. But if they do, well, this thing just respawns infinitely here, so that would be an infinite food source, and survival wouldn't be any issue here. But for the sake of this video, I'll be focusing on how long you can survive, assuming the power-ups don't give you any nutrition at all. Even if all they do is just let us flutter around for a bit though, they still boost this level's survivability drastically, giving us access to every single enemy on this planet or asteroid or whatever. In total, we have 2 piranha plants, 6 beetles, and 5 slurpless. They're called slurpless. Now these slurpuses are pretty small, but not too small. So mostly they have about a day's worth of meat on them. Not very scientific, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with a blue alien ball. Like, do these things have skeletons? I don't know. They might not even be edible. The piranha plants and beetles, however, are based on real world things. So we actually know we can eat them. Plus, they're a lot larger and got so much of that juicy good stuff on them that it's actually gonna rot before we can eat it all. There's no way to keep this much meat cool once we collect it. And to make things worse, despite the fact that I could personally eat about 10 pounds of meat in a day, the human body can really only digest and absorb about 3 to 4 times as many calories and nutrients as it burns in a day over any given time frame, according to the research I found online. Now, we could take these wooden fences and maybe some sticks from these trees to start a fire and cook the meat, try to dry it out a bit, make it last a bit longer, but there's still no real preservatives like salt for us to use around here. And keeping it dry will be hard when all this water is probably keeping the air very humid. This stuff is still gonna go bad after a couple of days. Tops. I'll say we get 8 days worth of nutrients for every portion of animal meat we can hunt for ourselves, assuming we have 2 days to eat it. Normally, I'd say we have as many portions as we have animals, but after my last video, some of you fucking deranged psychopaths in the comment section made a pretty good point. We don't need to kill an animal before we start eating it. You know how when you were a kid, you'd pluck the legs off of spiders to see how many they could lose and still walk? Because that little science experiment is about to come in real handy. Because I'm gonna be ripping the beetle legs off of these things and consuming them one by one, each day coming back for more. Now, these beetles only got 4 legs, and while they could probably move around just fine with just 3. Typically, when a bug loses half their legs, they can no longer support their own body weight, meaning it can no longer seek out food and water itself and will soon die of dehydration. Assuming it doesn't bleed out all over the grounds, but What I'm trying to say is we're only going to be reliably getting 2 portions of meat from each of these guys, or about 16 days worth of nutrients. The piranha plants, though, it might be different in plants, but in most animals, if you cut out the tongue, they just die of blood loss. Usually, not an organ you want to lose. So I'm just going to say the piranha plants only give us 1 portion of food, just to be conservative. So altogether, with 5 suckos, 6 beetles, and 2 piranha plants, we have about 117 days worth of food. But we're still somehow not done with this fucking galaxy. We'll speed things up after this one, I promise. Everything we've looked at so far is just the first planetoid. There's 3 more we have access to, all of which are locked behind the use of launch stars. Now in Super Mario Galaxy, you can't use a launch star without a Luma's help. Principally, there's spin attack, which is required to activate these things in game. However, Mario Galaxy is not the only game these things appear in. For example, in Super Smash Bros., literally any character who touches a launch star will be launched without any assistance whatsoever. Is this an accurate and canonical representation of how these things actually work? Almost certainly not. Am I going to use it as an excuse to let us use these warp stars? I absolutely am, because it makes the video more interesting, and that's really the most important thing to me. Now there is a separate, smaller problem in that they also launch Mario at exactly 144 miles per hour, usually onto a hard surface, and that's just in the levels. The game implies they launch him at faster than the speed of light when flying off from the hub world. Can a normal human survive being launched out of one of these things and landing? No, I don't think they could. But these launch stars weren't just designed for Mr. Bing Bing Wahoo over here. And since Mario is often shown as being able to take fall damage in game, I'm pretty sure hitting something at the speed of light would still kill him just the same way it would kill anyone else. So there may be some magical impact protection for people who use them. I don't really know, but at the very least, it makes a fair bit of sense from a world building perspective. So these things could be usable. I'll make sure to mention when we have to use these things though, just in case you don't agree. But regardless, assuming that we can use these things, we not only get access to an extra 5 piranha plants and 4 more beetles, but 3 of these messed up looking space Goombas too. And since these ones are next to a pool of water, if we just cut those little piggies off and patch them up, we can just kind of gently lay them on their side next to the water so they can still hydrate themselves until we come back for seconds. Although now that I think about it some more, they may also just drown themselves if they go to take a drink and fall in face first with no limbs to flip themselves over. So I'll just be conservative here and say we can take 1 limb from them. All in all, this brings the total food supply up to a healthy 269 to 293 days worth of nutrients. Add in an extra couple months of eating honey while we slowly die of malnutrition, and we're looking at a nice 10 months before we finally kick the bucket here. Now, I did consider eating the bees, but even if you kill one of them, there's a whole army that's going to be on the lookout for you afterwards. I mean, maybe not a whole army, more like 5 or 6 of them, but 5 dudes with spears could still take me down no problem. Staying on the bee guard's good side is absolutely essential for our survival here. Saying we're going to be able to pull off eating one of them too was like saying, yeah, I'm going to break into that military base and start stealing shit to pawn off. Like, dude, no, you're not. You're not doing that. Best to just move on and try not to think too much about your inevitable demise. How about we try some other place where we'll starve to death, but way less comfortably. The Loop-de-Loop Galaxy. A galaxy that is comprised almost entirely of water. So at the very least we got that settled. Or do we? Because between the palm trees and the brightly colored saltwater fish, this water is coming off as really ocean-coated, and the ocean is salty. You can't drink that. Something to consider, however, is why the ocean is salty in the first place. You see, water we find in rivers or in lakes on land is fresh, not because it doesn't have salt in it. Salt from the earth is actually sucked up by rivers all the time, but simply at such a slow rate that it's very rare that this water becomes undrinkable before it eventually pours into the ocean, where all the salt that every river on Earth has ever picked up just kind of sits there forever. I mean, I think some of it gets sucked up back into the Earth eventually through like the plate tectonics, but you get the point. Galaxies with little to no land are likely to have little to no salt, meaning the water we see here is probably fresh, or maybe not, who the fuck knows. They really could just be putting anything they want in these galaxies. It doesn't have to follow real-world rules. If it's salty, we're dead. There you go. That's what would happen. Not very interesting, is it? Now then, let's assume this water is fresh, because things are more fun when we get to struggle a bit before we die. Now, you start off in this area with some penguins and trees. Normally, when I see another living being inhabiting the same space as me, my mind immediately turns to consuming them, and this location is no different. However, attacking any of the animals in this group with a 20-foot-tall ripped version of themselves is probably a very good way to get ourselves killed. If we pick a fight here, the only thing for us to find in those big muscular arms is oblivion. So we move forward to the racetrack, where we can find a lot of fish. And I do mean a lot of fish. These things are everywhere. I actually counted them as I went around the course and found there to be about 250. Number maybe one or two off because they move around and I might have counted the same schools at the start of the course twice, but the number is in the right ballpark at the very least. Now, we could use the palm trees at the start to either create a spear or weave a sort of basic net from the leaves. So catching the fish isn't going to be super difficult, but 250 fish is not a lifetime supply of fish. Normally, the fish would breed and we wouldn't really need to worry about that too much, but like, where would they lay their eggs? There's no bottom to this water. They're just gonna fall out into the void. The fish that are already here are all the fish we're ever going to have. All we have to do now is figure out how long they'll last us. Now, I don't know what kind of fish these are. They're just kind of generic, colorful reef fish swimming around in the ocean. So, to keep this scientific, I'm going to just choose a real-world fish at random and pretend they're all the same as that. That random fish being my favorite ocean fish from Animal Crossing, the red snapper. Your average red snapper has about 340 grams of edible mass, which only gives you about 450 calories, meaning based on a 2,000 calorie diet, we'll need to eat about 4 a day to keep ourselves alive. If we manage to catch and eat every single fish in this loop, we'll have enough food to give us about 56 days total. We're going to be dead within 3 to 4 months of our arrival here from starvation. And honestly, that's our best case scenario. Because once you get into the ring with all the fish, there's it's not really any places for us to like sleep. There's just water. I think the big penguin might be able to move us off the race course and back onto it. So like maybe he'll lend a hand while he's around, but like do you really think he's going to be coming to the race course every single day for the next 2 months while we eat all the fish out of it? Hell, he might disappear the same day we get there and leave us stuck on this podium with no water. Or worse, in the water, with no way out to dry land. We survive here at his will and only for as long as we can make our fish last. Not a great galaxy. But at least nothing's actively trying to kill us here, like our next galaxy, Bowser Jr.'s robot reactor, where we are immediately going to be stuck on this fuck-ass planet, with one half covered in armored Goombas, and the other half covered in heat-seeking missiles. Look, I am not Mario. I cannot just dodge these things, and I do not have the strength to shove these 6-foot-tall armored mushrooms into a black hole. I'm going to be a sitting duck here. Maybe I'll be lucky and be able to dropkick all these Goombas off the planet while they stand near the edge. But if I can't do that, they're almost certainly going to get to me while I sleep, and I'll be doomed. Hell, with no way to defend myself, they might even be able to get me before then if they decide to start chasing me. And then, even if you did survive somehow, there's no water here anyway. You'd simply be prolonging your suffering as you slowly desiccate on the surface of a faraway, hostile planet. But with that covered, that's it for our first set of galaxies in the Terrans. Normally, I would take a step back here and evaluate the hub world now that we're done with the first set of levels. And as there is not a single bite of food to be found here, that may sound like a pretty simple task. But I'm instead going to be skipping that for now, because after analyzing every other level in the game, I came to an unfortunate realization that the lack of food here is not the full story. And to understand the true nature of the observatory, we must first come to understand the very nature of the universe we find ourselves in. But for now, just know that the reason Rosalina can survive in a space station with no food in it is not because she doesn't need to eat. Anyway, let's take a look at our next batch of galaxies in the Fountain. Space Junk Galaxy. There is no water. Battle Rock Galaxy. There is no water. Bowser's Star Reactor. There is no water. Hurry Scurry Galaxy. There is no water. Rolling Green Galaxy. Believe it or not, there is no water. Who would have thought that the fountain would be home to all the driest fucking places in the universe. Well, I mean, I guess the existence of green grass and clouds all over the place might at least imply that it rains sometimes, but look, I'm not counting on it for our survivability ranking since we never actually see rain in game, but there is at least a chance we might be able to catch some rain to drink if we dig a hole in the starting area here. Also, while we're here, every time I see people talk about this game online, I see them talking about how much they hate the levels we have to roll this ball around. But you know, I actually really like this level. I think it's fun, and if you can roll this ball forward to the next planetoid without falling off to the planet below, there's even a bunch of food for us to get. I mean, let me know if you can do this backwards somersault that Mario's doing, because personally, I cannot do that. I'm going to be starving to death right at the start of this level, even if I did manage to catch enough rainwater to keep myself alive. Now, I'm sure some of you have been asking, well, if we have water, why don't you just eat the star bits falling for food? Good question. Why aren't I eating these rocks for nourishment? Well, there's a lore reason. In Rosalina's background story, we do find the star bits are actually edible and taste like honey. However, in this story, Rosalina also continues to eat regular human food, only using the star bits as seasoning after this. Plus, using the fact that Luma can use 1,000 star bits to create an entire solar system along with Einstein's theory of special relativity, it's actually possible to determine that one star bit contains enough calories for trillions of human lifetimes. If she was absorbing even the tiniest fraction of a star bit's energy when consuming them, she would be the fattest human in history. Or she would just die of diabetes or something. So presumably, she's getting her nutrition from the human food she keeps consuming, not the star bits. Meaning, we need to keep getting our energy from actual organic material as well. Plus, you know what else has a ton of calories? Gasoline. You want to drink gasoline? Just because something has a lot of energy doesn't mean you can actually eat it. And just as gasoline is only a suitable food for a hungry Ford F-150, drink up, little buddy. Star bits are only a suitable food for hungry Lumas. But what are these Lumas doing with all the energy we're giving them? Let's go take a look at what this guy outside the fountain created in the Slingpod Galaxy. Imagine you kill yourself to make a galaxy. And this is what you get. A bunch of sticky rocks and some fireballs. Do you think that Luma just create galaxies at random? Or do you think that this dumb fat fuck chose to do this on purpose? What a waste. On the plus side though, we don't have to spend long here. Because we're going to die of dehydration. There's no food or water here at all. I'm surprised we can even breathe here considering it looks like we're just floating in the middle of space. Honestly, this place is so awful. If I was here, I might consider jumping in a black hole and calling it a day. But killing ourselves kinda defeats the point of this whole video. What about this guy though? How stupid is his galaxy? This is the sweet, sweet galaxy. Now, if I'm gonna blow myself up to create a galaxy, this is what I'm gonna do. I mean, I personally wouldn't make a cake, but you know, I would make a fun and creative galaxy, not just a sticky pile of rocks. One of the toads here even says that it's mint chocolate chip, so it's safe to assume that this galaxy doesn't just look like food, but is food. So we got our caloric needs all sorted out. Shame about the fact that there's still no water here though. We're gonna die over the next 3 days or so, but at least we got some snacks to enjoy instead of just dying in this gooey ass void this freak decided to cook up. It's still 7 galaxies in a row with no water though. So let's try mixing things up and going somewhere else where we can die for some other reason instead. With the Beach Bowl Galaxy. Right off the bat, bam, water. Lots of water. Now they call this ocean water, and it has a lot of saltwater fish and plants in here, but even if it is salty, that's not a problem for us. Because this ocean galaxy has a big ass waterfall for some reason. So the real question here is the waterfall salty? Now, a fun thing about salt water is that you can't really tell the difference between it and fresh water just by looking at it, but you can see what it leaves behind when it evaporates. You know, salt. There's no salt around the waterfall. Have you ever been next to a waterfall? They aren't exactly known for keeping everything around them dry. If this water had salt in it, we'd see it all over the place. All we need to find now is food, which is going to be pretty easy. You see that coconut? Get rid of it, turn around, bam, another coconut. Coconuts just spawn in here. I have no idea why, but considering that this is the first thing we've looked at in the entire game that respawns, it's probably an intentional piece of level design that I will abuse to the fullest extent possible. Now, while coconuts are a pretty good source of sugar, they're not exactly a great source for nutrients in general, particularly protein. Unlike honey, there isn't actually somewhat useful amount here, about 1.5 to 2 grams in every coconut. But for every 2,000 calories of coconut we eat, we're still only getting about 4% of our daily protein needs. We're gonna need some sort of alternative source of nutrients to supplement these things. We have the penguins, of course, but the hot ones here again. And I can't really kill a penguin while he's here protecting them. But what about the ocean creatures? Seaweed is a good source of many vitamins, and even if it's light on protein, it's still pretty useful. But the big thing we want here is the fish. In the ocean, we have 40 fish. Fish, rich in essential proteins, and the perfect diet supplement to keep us going. Once again, I am going to be using the elegant and noble red snapper for our real-world point of comparison, because I'm too lazy to look up anything else, and I'm not sure what else I would even use. Each of these 40 fish gives us about 450 calories and 90 to 100 grams of protein each, double what we need on a daily basis, which means we don't even have to eat a fish every day, just every other. But since there's only 40 fish, that means we'd still be running out of protein after just 3 months. We need to stretch this supply out as long as possible to give them time to breed. Now let me tell you, I know a lot about fish sex, and they don't typically have sex. They just kind of plop it all out into the water. Leave it up to God whether or not something happens with all of that. Like, fish will literally spray out thousands of eggs at a time. So in the time it takes for us to eat these things, they might just lay enough eggs to replace themselves. The average red snapper takes 2 years to achieve sexual maturity, which means after we eat all their parents, we have to wait 21 months until they start breeding more fish again. But that doesn't mean we can't eat the babies in the meantime. We just have to eat a lot of them. But as long as the number of fish that survive to adulthood exceeds the number we originally had, it's mission accomplished. We'll have established an infinite food supply. Now, I found a few rough formulas to estimate red snapper growth rates to determine how many we need to eat each month in order to meet our nutritional needs. And it looks like once we eat their parents, we're going to need to eat about 3,167 of the babies before they reach sexual maturity. And then, of course, we'll need at least 40 extra fish to survive for the next breeding cycle, which works out to a total of 3,207 fish. But there's a second problem in that red snapper aren't very good at surviving on their own in general. According to the US Fish and Wildlife Service, only about 1% of eggs actually end up producing a fish that survives. So, in order to have enough fish for us to actually survive all this, we need the first generation of adults to lay about 322,700 eggs. That's a lot of eggs. Fortunately for us, however, red snapper are absolute freaks. Assuming it's summer, which, I mean, seems like a pretty safe bet here, a young single female lays on average 167 eggs per day. And with 40 fish, we should have around 20 females here. If we eat 1 fish every other day, we'll kill a female on average every 4 days. So, knowing that, we can actually get a rough estimate of how many eggs we'll get out of them while their population dwindles, and that number comes to about 140,000 eggs. That is not even half of what we need. But we don't need to start eating these guys right away, do we? It wouldn't be good for us, but we can go a month without eating protein, giving the fish a chance to lay more eggs. If we wait longer than that, we risk dying of a nutritional deficit, so I'd say a month is the longest we can really safely hold off. Even then, that only brings our total egg count up to about 236,666, so unfortunately, there's no way to guarantee our survival. But this is only the worst case scenario. Older red snappers actually lay more eggs. I'm talking literally 100 times more eggs every day. Like, if these are all old girls in there, we got everything we need in about 10 days. Hell, and even if all these fish are very young, as long as they've already been laying eggs for at least a month before we actually get here, we'll have all the eggs we need in order to survive. So I'm going to be putting this level down as indefinitely survivable. But just know, there is an outside chance there isn't enough edible protein here to keep us alive. And if that's the case, we're only going to be lasting 1, maybe 2 years before our protein supply slowly dwindles and runs out. It is nice to actually find a place that's at least probably survivable for once. Let's try somewhere that's a bit more spooky though. The Ghostly Galaxy. Now this level's pretty much just a big haunted mansion, so shelter's checked off the list as long as you don't worry about all the things living inside of it. We might want to stay outside, actually. Plus, out here we have 3 pumpkin-headed Goombas we can eat. Very festive. Very fun. I like it here. You know what would be even more festive? If we had like a spooky skeleton here, and I think we can make that happen because we're going to be dying of dehydration in 3 days. There's no water in this level. Look, I know dying of dehydration over and over again is a little boring, so what if we took it a level level where we'll still die of dehydration, but not because there isn't any water. The Bubble Breeze Galaxy. Now, you see the whole planet as you fly in, and it's actually entirely a swamp. And the fun thing about swamps is that they're made of water. The bad thing about this one is that it is so goddamn toxic that we'll die from just even touching this stuff. The only reason I'm sure this is all even water is because all the plants have to be sucking up moisture from somewhere. For a human though, this place is a death sentence. But for what this galaxy lacks in habitability, it makes up for in weird law implications. When you get near the first of the titular bubbles in this galaxy, you run into this sign explaining how you can move these bubbles around, which is really weird because in order to move them around, you got to use the on-screen pointer to blow them from the outside. That is a gameplay mechanic that shouldn't really exist in-game lore-wise. Like, Mario can't create wind himself, and all that our Luma friend here gives us the ability to do in this game is spin. Obviously, this sign exists for players to read, not Mario, and yet its physical embodiment in the game world implies that it's something Mario can read, not just the player. Meaning that as far as the creator of this sign is concerned, anyone in the universe of Super Mario Galaxy can control these bubbles with the pointer, and I don't really understand what the lore implications of that are. Can Mario see the pointer? Is it some sort of psychic energy? I have no idea. But I'm going to assume this means that gameplay elements involving the pointer, such as the bubbles or pole stars, can actually be used by anyone living in this universe, including us. That won't help us survive in this hellhole at all, but it might come in handy in the future. Moving on to Buoy Base Galaxy, we are immediately greeted with a buoy floating in massive amounts of that good wet. We are not going to be dying of thirst here. And it's pretty safe to assume this is freshwater given the lack of land and the general fact that you don't typically want to keep salt water around machinery in artificial environments like this. So, what do we have for food? Well, there's a Goomba up top if you can wall jump, but I can't. So we're gonna be stuck with these 5 bloopas and 3 little penguins, all alone without their big friend. I mean, I say little, but these things are still taller than most humans, but even though they're big birds, they're still just little bitches. And these little freaks don't stand a chance in an actual fight against an equally sized land mammal such as ourselves. Now, a penguin could of course outswim a human being, but these ones are very friendly, and that will be their downfall, as all we have to do is grab them while they're talking to us. One twist of their neck and it's dinner time, baby. Now that's where the problems come in. We have no way to store food here. Eating the entire penguin before the meat goes bad in a few hours is impossible. So we're going to have to start eating the moment we kill these things. And even then, we're getting like 4 days worth of calories out of one of these guys tops. Plus, once we kill one of them, the other 2 probably won't want to talk to us anymore. Meaning if we want to eat them, we have to catch them while they run away, and I don't think I can catch a penguin in the water. So honestly, if these penguins play it smart, we're never going to be catching them. We just can't outswim these guys. They see us coming, they're just gonna swim away. The squid, however, are a bit easier. These things are dumb as bricks and can be drawn up to the surface relatively easily, where after disassembling these robots, we would have ourselves a nice metal rod with which we can stab these squids with. From there, we can just drag the bodies back to the land and chow down. All in all, we'd have about 6 animals we could eat for roughly 24 days worth of food and calories. If you can somehow catch the other 2 penguins, you could last another week, but we're still going to be starving to death here in about 2 to 3 months tops. Not great, but nowhere near as rough as some of the other levels in the game, like the final level of the kitchen, Bowser Jr.'s Airship Armada. Now right off the bat, this place seems pretty bad. A lot of things trying to kill us. And the only way forward is to be shot out of a goddamn cannon. Normally, I would say this would kill us on impact, but we don't ever actually impact anything after being shot out of this thing. Instead, we can catch ourselves using the pull stars and then gently slide down this pole. Does this access to further parts of the level actually help us survive? No. No, there is no water to be found anywhere. We're dead in 72 hours. But if you get far enough into this level, you'll actually run into this Luma running a little shop, where if you feed him 30 star bits, he'll give you a mushroom. And by give you, I mean he turns himself into a mushroom for you to eat. I don't want to eat this. Also, he killed himself to make a snack. Starbits aren't even that rare, dude. Why would Why would you kill yourself for 30 of them? While this isn't useful to our survival here, do keep this abomination in mind though, because it's going to become a useful bit of knowledge later on. If we walk outside the kitchen and feed another one of these gluttonous little freaks though, we'll gain access to the Drip Drop Galaxy, our third Hungry Luma Galaxy, and the first one where there is not any explanation for how all these things living here actually got here. This galaxy did not exist 15 seconds ago. Why is there a group of penguins living here? They even have a pre-existing conflict with these eels in the ocean. Did the Luma create a tribe of penguins with pre-coded memories of the past that never actually happened? Do these memories even matter if they aren't real? Of course they do, because they allow us to more easily manipulate the penguins for our own personal benefit. Here in the Drip Drop Galaxy, the penguins are slowly starving to death because these eels have been eating all the fish. Normally, I would say we're doomed because, like, what do you want me to do against a giant eel? But all Mario has to do to kill these eels is grab a shell and throw it at them. These shells automatically propel themselves forward with no need for your assistance, and we literally just need to point them in the right direction. Like, if you can hold your breath for 30 seconds at a time, this is actually pretty feasible for a normal human to achieve. And not only would this allow us to eat all the eels we just killed, but it also makes us a hero figure for the penguins. And we can use this newfound hero status to position ourselves as a leader within the tribe, which will come in pretty handy. There's only about 50 fish visible in the water, and we have got a lot of mouths we need to feed. However, assuming that the penguins' fabricated memories are accurate to the real-world situation of the planet, it does appear that surviving up to this point hasn't been an actual issue for them. So I guess it's possible that there's more fish just hiding in this ship or something. They don't all have to be swimming out in the ocean all the time, I guess. But if it does turn out there aren't enough fish for everyone left, that's where our social status comes into play. We can attempt to guilt trip the penguins into giving us food at the expense of the less valuable members of the tribe. After all, if we aren't around to keep them safe from the eels, then what will happen if they come back? If one of these penguins needs to starve so that I can live, that's a good deal to make when the alternative is the possible extinction of the whole tribe. Things may be tough for a while we do what needs to be done while the fish repopulate, but this is a hardship I feel we are uniquely positioned to overcome. So I'm going to be putting this level down as survivable. Anyway, with this planet settled, it's time to head on over to Rosalina's bedroom, home of the Dusty Dune Galaxy. Why does she keep access to a desert-themed galaxy in her bedroom? There has never been a time in my life where I was sitting in my bed thinking to myself, you know what I need right now? A little bit of sand in the sheets. What are you even doing here, girl? And it's not even like normal sand in Dusty Dune Galaxy either. It's all quicksand. Now, humans actually can float in quicksands, but so should a skeleton, and the dry bones that live here can't even handle this. They don't seem too hostile though, which is really lucky because we're gonna be stuck here with them. If you want to move forward from this area in this galaxy, you gotta use these little dust devils, but like, what the hell is this? If you tried this in real life, the rotational force of you spinning around like this would rip your arms out of your goddamn sockets. And his head isn't even moving. His whole body is spinning around and his head is just stationary like some sort of a methed out owl. This is not a viable option for a real life human being. Only a freak like him. We're going to be dying in 72 hours tops from dehydration. Hell, and if it's hot in this desert, we might even die sooner, as our body will keep sweating out all of our fluids. But moving on to our next galaxy of the bedroom, we have the Honeyclimb Galaxy. As the name implies, Honeyclimb Galaxy has plenty of honey, plenty of beetles for some good protein, and it's all gonna be useless because there's not a single drop of water. If you were to somehow spawn in here, you would be thirsty and dead. But up next, we have a galaxy that's entirely made of water in the most annoying way possible. Freeze Flame Galaxy. We start off this level on an ice donut and have to catch this penguin to progress forward using a launch star he unlocks for us. Honestly, he's not that fast, and for what humans lack in speed, they do make up for in endurance. So, given enough time, we could probably give him a good enough chase to tire him out and eventually catch him ourselves. At first, I thought things would be pretty easy for us here on out. Just grab some ice from the freeze parts of the galaxy and bring them over to the flame part to thaw them out. But after exploring this level for a bit, I came to the unfortunate realization that the freeze and flame parts of the galaxy are entirely different planets. We're stuck on the ice level, and we are not dressed for this weather. Unfortunately, scientists haven't frozen enough people to death to know exactly how long it takes on average for it to happen, but from most estimates I could find, in conditions like this, hypothermia in humans typically sets in under an hour. Normally, this would mean we're doomed, but Freeze Flame Galaxy is home to a little power-up called the Ice Flower, which gives us a temporary ice power-up and presumably immunity to the cold. Problem? It lasts 30 seconds. That is not a lot of time. I initially thought about building an igloo, and while there is snow in this level to work with, there's honestly not a lot of it. Most of this level is actually just ice, and where there is snow, it seems to only be an inch or two of it. Not enough to build an entire shelter from. You could, in theory, make an igloo from ice, but good luck cutting up ice blocks with your bare hands. All in all, though, I think we'll be able to stave off hypothermia for as long as we can keep grabbing the ice flowers to refresh our immunity to the cold. But the jump to reach them is pretty hard for a normal human, and sooner or later, you will begin to tire. Your legs will begin to give out, and you will eventually succumb to the elements as you become too fatigued to wade through this freezing cold fountain to continue picking up this flower over and over again. I'd say we'd be able to survive here a few hours tops. This galaxy just isn't suited for human habitation. So, how about we try another galaxy that was specifically designed for it? The Gusty Garden Galaxy. Now this is a good place to live. At least on the surface. We have fresh water sources, entire planetoids made of food, beautiful beds of flowers growing on lush green fields of grass, providing a nice comfortable environment. This looks like a place where we can not only survive, but thrive. But that's assuming you could actually get your hands on all these things. You can't get to these apples at all. I mean, you can get to them in game, but you cannot get to them. They only open up after you get a star and leave the level. That would break our arbitrary rules for survival that I've cooked up for this challenge. And frankly, the integrity of my YouTube gaming video is worth dying for. But that's not even the biggest issue we have. The biggest issue is that our only source of water is going to be this fountain, getting to which will probably get us killed. Not only do you have to kill this giant piranha plant to open the route, which I mean, Mario just does it by giving him a little foot boop on the back of the head, so a normal human might actually be able to do this. But the big thing is that you're going to be spawning on this part of the level, on this little bit of land, where the only way forward is going to be grabbing one of these flowers and floating off to another island in the wind. The problem? Grabbing one and floating the hell away isn't as easy as it looks, because you're continuously falling and you gotta spin a couple of times to regain elevation. Now, I've been hand waving the spinning a lot in this video, but there is no way to ignore it this time. Mario has to spin to gain elevation. There's no magicking your way out of gravity, except of course for when you do, but that isn't applicable here. We simply do not have the power to spin like this. So I'll be simply grabbing 2 flowers instead. With double the sail power, our weight will matter half as much, and we'll be able to make it significantly further before falling. Which, I mean, we don't really need to make it too much further. We only need to make it like an extra 20 feet to get into this planetoid's gravity well. So, I don't know. This might be a stupid idea, but really, we don't need too much strategy when we only need to make it slightly further. From here on out, the path to the fountain is actually pretty simple. The hardest part will be climbing these vines, but they're vines. Just grab the leaf stems and pull yourself up. Humans can climb ropes without anything extra to grab onto, so this is definitely possible. So as long as you avoid this particular vine. Why is that in the game? Why did they put that in here? There's pretty much no way to screw it up. Follow the path and eventually you'll get to this launch star, and our water problem will be solved, only for our food problem to then begin. Once we get onto this planet, we're stuck here. There is one rabbit, which is absolutely massive. Could easily get a few days worth of food off that thing before it begins to rot. But after that, our main source of food will be these strange red fruit, which seem to resemble a beefsteak tomato. I mean, I say that, but these things grow on bushes instead of vines, and they're like perfect spheres as far as I can tell. Honestly, aside from the fact that they're both red, they really don't look like tomatoes at all, do they? I have no idea what these things are, but that means they could be anything. Let's just say that these things have all the nutrients we need to live for one day, which might not sound realistic, but each of these things is the size of Mario's head, and Mario has a freakishly fat head. So if anything, I'm being conservative with the amount of food we have here. There's 48 of these fruit in these bushes, and these flowers are growing on the same bush as the fruit. So presumably, all of these flowers may eventually bear fruit in the future as well. Now, there is a small problem that we have no idea how long these things are going to stay on the bush for before they fall off and begin to rot, and we have no idea how long it'll take for these flowers to bear fruit. Best case scenario, the bush produces fruit faster than we can eat them, and they flower all year round, meaning we just never run out of fruit, and we can live here forever on this stupid grass cube. Worst case scenario, these flowers are never fertilized and never bear fruit, and these 48 fruit are all we get. We run out after 48 days, and we just starve to death after about 3 or 4 months. Well, I mean, I guess that's not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that these fruit are poisonous, and we just drop dead after we try eating one. But like, you could say that about pretty much any fictional food, so that's just pretty boring to consider. All in all, though, Gusty Gardens is one of the more optimistic locations as far as our survival chances go, so I'll be putting it down as temporarily survivable for now, but there is a decent chance we're all set to live here for as long as we ever want to. Unlike the final level of the bedroom, Bowser's Dark Matter Plant, which has no water, and no chance for us to survive whatsoever. Right outside the bedroom, though, if we sling our stuff into this star's stomach until he's stuffed and satisfied, we can access Big Mouth's Gold Bane, home of the only implementation of jiggle physics in the entire game, along with this old man who says it's his secret fishing hole. Normally, when I see another person in these survival challenges, my first thought turns to, how can I eat this guy? But that won't be necessary here, because this galaxy is home to a bizarre space-time anomaly, which is constantly spitting out these turtles for us to eat. And we can use this infinitely burning fire to cook them up. And there's frankly an absurd amount of water here as well, more than any human could ever hope to drink in their lifetime. Between the limitless food and water and this old man that can serve to keep us company, Big Mouth's Gold Bane easily springs to the top of our list as one of the most survivable locations in the entire game. But if we head upstairs to the engine room, we can find a number of galaxies that are way worse, starting off with the Toy Time Galaxy. Toy Time Galaxy is my personal favorite galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy. Not because it has particularly good level design or interesting gameplay mechanics, although I do love the spring power-up. I've never heard anyone say anything good about it, but it is silly and fun. I think people are way too hard on this bouncy little thing. Honestly, I just like this level because it's bright, colorful, and the music makes me happy. I'm a very vibes-based person. If something looks fun, I'm gonna love it. Unfortunately, however, while good vibes give me life, they cannot keep me from death. This entire level is made from wood, plastic, and metal, with not a single drop of water in sight. Just us, the toys, and the tin skins over here. We're going to die here of dehydration, but at least it'll be fun in the meantime. Unlike Bowser Jr.'s lava reactor, this entire level is based on a lava planet. You do start off on this smaller bunch of rocks orbiting around it, and while we could conceivably make our way down to the surface, why the hell would you want to do that? There's no water there, and it's probably extraordinarily hot. Hell, even standing on this planetoid in orbit, it's probably not too cool here either. If I had to guess, we're going to be sweating a lot due to the heat, and dying of a heat stroke in less than a day or two. But if lava planets aren't your thing, that's fine, because right next door we have a water planet where honestly, we might somehow die even sooner. Welcome to Bonefing Galaxy. This galaxy starts us off on a toad ship, but other than that, there is no solid ground to stand on whatsoever. In theory, once we get to the planet proper, you could kill the giant bonefin, since you just need to grab these shells and let them loose in their general direction. But like, then what? What do you even do in this situation? Even if you could drink the water here, you're still gonna drown as soon as you're too tired to swim. I think this might be the first level where dying of dehydration is somehow going to be the option that keeps us alive the longest, as our best bet is to just wait it out here for 3 days on the toad ship as we slowly succumb to our fate, assuming they don't fly off into space and kill us sooner. But we'll just assume they'll treat us better than we would them. But before we head off to the next level dome or whatever these things are called, it's time for us to head to a special standalone galaxy, the Gateway Galaxy. I look forward to visiting this planet with the Loomis every 100 years. How old are you? Serving as the link between Earth and the Common Observatory. This is actually the first proper galaxy in the game. I'm just putting it 3/4 of the way through this video because A, this is roughly when you go back to it, and B, I wanted to start with another galaxy for pacing reasons. We gotta do a bunch of nerdy math stuff for this one, and believe it or not, people typically don't like to start off a YouTube video figuring out the volume of a puddle. Gotta sneak that stuff in once you've already committed to watching the full video. Speaking of which, I hope you like puddles, cause that's all the water you're going to be drinking for the rest of your life here. If we ever move forward from this planetoid, we will die from dehydration because it's not possible to come back. We need to sit around this puddle for the rest of our life. But is this little puddle really enough to keep us hydrated? Well, it's hard to tell at a glance, but if you actually look real closely, the water actually comes up to Mario's calf, meaning it's a bit deeper than it seems from far away. I mean, maybe other people noticed that right away, but I always thought this puddle was like half an inch of water until I started making this video. By taking a few different screenshots of the puddle from different perspectives to account for the planet's curvature, and then copy-pasting a bunch of pictures of Mr. Hoo Ha Yahoo all over it, we can get some rough estimates of the dimensions of this puddle. It's about 5 Marios wide at its most narrow point. The smaller circle of the puddle is about 6.2 Marios wide, and the larger circle about 9.27 Marios. All we need to do now is figure out how tall Mario is, and we'll know how much water there is in this puddle. According to the official Mario lore, which I know for a fact Nintendo always follows to a T when designing their games, we know that Mario has an official height of 5'1", or 155 centimeters. Plugging that into these measurements, we find that this puddle is roughly 2,350,994 square centimeters, but that's including these two rocks. The water itself is only about 2,207,633 square centimeters. Now we just need to find the depth of the water, which, when we zoom in on Mario's legs and count the pixels, we can see is very roughly 14% of his height, or 21.7 centimeters deep, giving us 47,898,396 cubic centimeters of water. That leaves us with about 12,653 gallons, or enough to last us about 34.6 years at 1 gallon per day. Not enough for a lifetime, but it will keep us going for quite a while. Hell, maybe we'll even get more water somehow from like a wayward comment or something. Who knows? It doesn't matter. None of this matters. There's no food. The only reason I even checked this puddle is to make sure we had enough water to last us while we take 2 months to starve to death or whatever. I would say we could eat these rabbits, but these aren't rabbits at all. They're disguised Luma, and trying to attack or consume a being that can turn itself into a goddamn solar system at will seems like a bad idea. Unless we can sweet talk one of these three into transforming themselves into a lifetime supply of food for us, we're going to be starving to death. Moving outside the gateway to the gateway, however, we have yet another hungry Luma galaxy, Boo's Boneyard. Boneyard, just like my bone. It's dry as shit. We're gonna die here. Moving forward to Gold Leaf Galaxy, things are looking pretty cozy. We have plenty of water right here next to spawn, along with a waterfall constantly supplying us with a nice fresh supply of drinking water. There's also a grate on the bottom of it. Who installed a grate into a waterfall? Is this whole thing artificial? Doesn't matter, because it's all ours for the drinking. Now the big problem here is going to be the fact that most of this level requires you to be a pretty good jumper in order to access it, and while that's no problem for this little New Yorker freak, we cannot do that. I mean, I can't do this. Let me know if you think you can, but in practice, I think a normal human will be stuck in the spawn area with access to this one waterfall and the cliff above it. So, what do we have here for food? We have 4 beetles and 3 rabbits. Probably can stretch it to 28 days worth of nutrients using our previously described methods, after which starvation would set in. Or at least that's what I was going to say until I realized that there's mushrooms everywhere. Now, of course, mushrooms can kill you super quickly if they're poisonous, but let's assume we can actually eat these because it's more fun that way. I'm not really sure what kind of mushrooms these are supposed to be, so we're just going to assume that all of these mushrooms have the same caloric value as a shiitake mushroom. According to the FDA, a single 60-calorie serving of shiitake mushroom is about 236 cubic centimeters. Meaning that there's just over 0.25 calories in every cubic centimeter of mushroom. In order to get the calories we need in order to survive, we'd need to eat about 7,886 cubic centimeters every day, or just under an 8-inch wide cube. Now that's kind of a lot of food, but you got all day to do it. And I already know I can eat that much food due to my real-life experiences of being a gluttonous fat ass who can't stop shoving things down his throat whenever he's bored. Now then, let's take a look at one of these mushrooms and see how big they are. The middle one here is about 183 centimeters tall, with the shaft being a nice girthy 54 centimeters wide, and the bell end being about 148 centimeters wide. Slapping these numbers into a basic formula for a cylinder and a semisphere, you get roughly a volume of 176,736 cubic centimeters, or just over 88 days worth worth of food. Like, even if I ended up overestimating this a bit, there are 52 mushrooms in this area that we're stuck in. They're not all as big as this one, but like, when a single mushroom will keep us fed for 3 months, it really doesn't matter. We have all the food we need here for a very long time. And the best part? Mushrooms are just part of a larger organism. Throughout the entire ground here is likely a large mycelium network supporting these things, meaning as we eat the mushrooms, the mycelium will continue to grow and produce new ones for us. And as long as the conditions are right, mycelium will just keep growing mushrooms on a regular basis. They don't need to wait a year like some weak-ass fruit tree. We're gonna have all the food we ever need, baby. That is assuming that there's no seasons here or anything. If it gets too cold, the mycelium will stop producing mushrooms at all. And I think the existence of fall foliage implies that there's seasons, but we have no way of knowing if trees act the same way here as they do on Earth. So we'll just put this one down as survivable for now. But just know, if winter does come, then we're dead. Whoop-de-doo. Not really too much more to consider there, honestly. So, with that settled, it's time to slide on over to Sea Slide Galaxy. Sea Slide Galaxy is one of the larger levels in Super Mario Galaxy, so we have a lot to work with here, with a massive ring of water dotted with a good number of islands for us to rest on. The biggest immediate problem we're going to have to face is that this water is very ocean-coated. One of the penguins even calls it an ocean, which means, you know, it might be salty. Now, as we've discussed before, that's not really a safe assumption to make when there's very little land around for the water to leach salt from. But we need to figure out how we would be dealing with salt water regardless. That's where this huge-ass tree comes into play. You see, trees are made of wood, and we can use that wood to start a fire, which, in turn, can power a basic desalinator. For anyone unfamiliar, this works by boiling the salt water. The water molecules will then turn into steam, while the salt remains left behind. We can then hang one of these palm leaves over the boiling water, where some of the steam will recondense into pure, fresh liquid water, which will then drip off the leaves into a second container, such as one of these seashells, where we can store it until ingestion. Now, this takes a lot of wood, but honestly, it would probably take decades to get through a tree of this size. And in that time, we can always grow another one on another part of the ocean loop, allowing us the chance to increase the size of our wood supply while we eat through the first tree. Or maybe all of this is just fresh water, and we don't need to care about any of that. Either way, water is not going to be a serious concern here. The real make or break factor here is going to be food and safety. When Mario first arrives in this galaxy, the penguins are all scared of this orca, who is keeping them out of the water, and presumably would force us to stay on this bit of land as well. But honestly, he's not so bad. You can just literally grab a shell, follow him around in some weird challenge he gives you, and he just kind of respects you after that and lets everyone back into the water again. You don't even have to swim yourself, since these shells just automatically move themselves forward. Any human could do this easily, and this orca is honestly kind of a chill guy. So we just need to figure out what we're going to be eating here. Now, of course, there's seaweed and a few schools of fish, but I only counted 45 fish when I did my lap around the loop. Now, we've already gone over this, and that's probably enough fish to keep us alive, but probably not enough to keep us alive along with 10 penguins and a whole ass whale. So we're probably going to need to look for an alternative food source. That's where this red Koopa comes into play. Stomp this turdy and another one spawns right in. Why do these turtles keep popping in like this? Space-time anomaly? A gift from God? Perchance. But all I know is that we have unlimited food, along with a few options to spice things up every now and again. All there is left for us to do now is create a small hut from these palm trees, and we'd be living comfortably in this tropical paradise for the rest of our lives. But that's enough of this sunny tropical paradise for now, because after stuffing another hungry Luma until he busts, we have yet another sand level we need to take a look at, the Sand Spiral Galaxy. Now, right off the bat, we have a problem we need to deal with, being this Kamek that keeps flying around throwing fireballs at us. Now, as normal humans who can neither fly nor throw balls of any kind, I feel as though we may be at some kind of a disadvantage here. We don't even have anything we can pick up to use as a weapon. We're just gonna have to beat this wizard to death with our bare hands. And honestly, I think this is where it's gonna end for us. The most likely outcome here is that we're gonna be dead in like the first 10 minutes. And I'm not gonna bullshit and say that this Kamek is only trying to kill Mario because this Kamek is part of Bowser's army either, because no, he isn't. He didn't even exist 5 minutes ago. This whole galaxy literally just popped into existence with him in it. This man's trying to kill us simply because he can. For the sake of realism, I'm putting this galaxy down as near instant death. But let's say that somehow we managed to kill him first. Now what? Well, obviously, we need to consume him, or at least as much of him as possible, before the meat begins to go bad in a few hours. Then we can turn our attention to the cave. Further inside, there's actually 3 guns continuously shooting water. If we just get into this bee suit and fly over to these beams that they're on, we can just kind of stick our head in these things and take a little sippy. If you get too wet though, you lose the bee suit, so you gotta be careful. But I think we can make it work. Problem: if you do lose the bee suit, you can't get back, and we will be doomed. Because our food supply is not on this metal beam here. It's back where we got the bee suit in the first place. Big problem with eating the toads though. They also need water, and despite apparently eating these mushrooms all day, this toad has not gained a suit, meaning they can't go get any water. They're going to die of dehydration before we do. This is a problem because that means we only have 3 days to eat them before they die and begin to rot. And since we can really only absorb 4 days worth of nutrients every day when it comes to meat, that means we're only going to be able to get 12 days worth of nutrients here. I mean, there are some bats further into the cave, but then we'd have to leave the water behind and we'd be dying even sooner. Best case scenario is we die of starvation in 2 months. But that's enough of this hellhole. It's time for us to head upstairs to our final area, the garden, which is pretty much just a grassy green pasture now that I look at it. What a terrible garden. It doesn't even look like you planted these flowers here. They just kind of look like wild ones that happen to be here, you floral fraud. But we don't need to dwell on that for long. In fact, we don't need to dwell on this entire set of galaxies for long, because they're all just absolutely terrible. Dreadnought Galaxy. There's a ton of water at the absolute end of the galaxy, but you gotta be able to wall jump to get to it, and I'm just not built like that. This one's no good. Matter Splatter Galaxy. Conceptually, this one is one of the cooler galaxies in the game. It's pretty much an auto-scrolling level, but the idea of the entire level fading in and out of existence is pretty cool, and does a better job of selling the bizarre sci-fi setting than 90% of the other levels in this game. However, it does not matter how cool a level concept is in a survival challenge. There is no water here, and we have no chance. Deep Dark Galaxy. Now, this one actually has some things for us to consider. Right off the bat, we have plenty of water. It could be salty, but honestly, we don't need to worry about drinking all this stuff on the ground this time, because we have not 1, but 4 magically respawning coconuts, which we can just kind of smash open and suck the milk out of. The fact that the turtles will respawn in front of us, but the coconuts won't, really unsettles me for some reason. It's almost sinister the way they hide their re-entrance to this reality from us. Almost like they don't want us to know something. Either that or the developers couldn't be bothered to animate it. I don't know. And it doesn't really matter, because we have infinite coconut milk to drink if this water is no good. Once again, our bottleneck is going to be finding something more nutritious than a coconut eat. We do have 3 crabs, but they don't respawn, and 7 fish aren't going to last more than a couple of weeks. So we're going to have to look elsewhere for food. Now, we got a bunch of these pink boys up on this planetoid, but A, I don't think we're going to be able to take on 20 of these things at once, and B, in order to reach them, we have to get shot out of a goddamn cannon, which, I mean, look, I've been really stretching our possibilities, assuming that we can use launch stars due to some mystical magic space stuff. But this is not a magic cannon. It's just gonna kill us when we hit that planet. These pink boys are off limits. And this creates further problems for us too, because the only fire flower in this galaxy is up there, and we need it in order to open this gate, preventing us from accessing the other 80% of the level. We can't even dig under the gate because it opens from the top. We're pretty much stuck here, slurping down coconut juice in perpetual twilight until the day we die of malnutrition. But how long will that be? We will have the 3 crabs that'll give us 12 days of protein, 7 fish that give us about 14, and then 3 toads who we'll need to have a discussion about. Now, as I'm sure you're all well aware, beating a toad unconscious, ripping off his legs, and using some seaweed as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding in order to keep the rest of his body preserved for later use would be quite an easy task, and net us a few more days of food. However, once we attack one toad, the other 2 are either gonna fight or flee. Now, toads are naturally weak and stupid. Plus, these ones are unarmed. I'm like 90% sure we can take them all on in a fight at once. Problem though, if we kill them all at once, that means we're portioning out our food suboptimally. And we can't just knock them unconscious either, because, well, we need to sleep ourselves, and it's not like we have a cage to put them in or anything while we sleep. If they wake up while we're sleeping, they're either gonna flee on the spaceship or bonk us on the head with a coconut while we're vulnerable. This leaves us with only one option. We're gonna have to break their arms and legs and then feed them coconut water every day until their time comes. Assuming we'll get 2 portions of food off each, we're probably only going to get like 8 days worth of protein out of each of these guys, bringing our total up to 34 days worth of nutrients between all of our food sources. The sugar in these coconuts will keep us going for a few months longer than that, but death is inevitable for everyone on this dark, lonely beach. But let's not dwell on that depressing ending, because it's time for us to check out the final galaxy of the garden, the Melty Molten Galaxy. Good news, we won't be dying in 72 hours of dehydration. Bad news, it's because this level is unimaginably hot. We're going to be dying in a couple hours top from a heat stroke, and honestly, that might be optimistic. This volcano is so close to erupting that the moment Mario even uses a launch star nearby, it fucking explodes. Have you ever been near a volcano when it starts shooting lava in the air? Typically not in an environment particularly conducive to life. But heading outside the garden and feeding our final Hungry Luma, we gain access to the Snow-Capped Galaxy. On the surface, this one actually has a lot going for it. There's a heavy snowfall which continuously covers the planet even as Mario uncovers it, which means we effectively have an infinite water source. Normally, the cold would mean we're doomed, but we can get a fire flower which we can use to keep ourselves warm. Now, the power-up only lasts like 30 seconds, but I'm assuming it powers us up the moment we touch it, just like how it works with Mario. So we can just kind of sit on top of the spawn when we want to warm up a bit. That way, every time it wears off, we immediately get it back. As far as food goes, we have 3 giant rabbits we can eat, but big problem. The entire point of this level is you gotta catch these 3 rabbits in under 150 seconds, and if you don't, Mario just fucking dies. Does he die of embarrassment? Are these rabbits killing you once they realize you're too slow to run away? I have no idea, but I do know that we're going to be subject to the same trial that Mario is. Look, is it possible to catch these guys? Yes. Am I personally able to catch 3 rabbits in 2.5 minutes? No. I will be dying here. But all of you are always assuming that you're better than me. So, assuming you could actually get past this stupid little challenge and get the chance to turn the tables on these inhospitable little shits, how long would they keep you fed for? According to some random website I found called ResearchGate, and you know they know their stuff because they got research in the title, a snow hare is 66.54% edible mass by weight and yields about 438 calories per pound of meat. The average snow hare in real life is only about 44 centimeters long head to tail and weighs 3.2 pounds. Now, measuring these guys from this far out isn't easy, but I got that these rabbits are roughly 129 centimeters long, making their length 2.9 times that of a real-life snow rabbit's. However, weight is a function of volume, so we need to find the cube of the length multiplier to find our weight multiplier, meaning that these guys should weigh about 25.5 times more than a standard snow rabbit, or 81 pounds, with a total of 54 pounds of edible mass, worth 23,771 calories, or just under 12 days worth of food. That's of course assuming they have the exact same weight to length and body mass ratios as a real rabbit, which of course, I mean, they almost certainly don't, so your results may be a few days off from my estimate. But the best part about this level, since we're on a snowy planet, after you kill all the rabbits right away, you can just store the meat outside in the cold. Now, meat can still rot while it's frozen, but at a much slower rate. From what I've read, it typically takes about 12 months for meat to go bad while it's frozen. And that is a lot longer than the 36 days worth of food we have here. So, we'll have plenty of time to eat these guys before we begin to starve away on this frozen little ice ball we're pretending is a galaxy. And with that, we're finished with all of these dome galaxies, leaving us with just a few of the worst goddamn places you'd ever want to live in your life. Starting off, we have a trio of galaxies called the Trial Galaxies. Who is this trial for? I genuinely have no idea. It's kind of just here for Mario to do. None of these galaxies are even required for beating the game, so I don't understand what they could possibly even be testing him for, but that's fine. First up, we have the Rolling Gizmo Galaxy. Look, I know I said I really liked the last rolling level, and that I didn't understand why people hated it, but after dying 30 times to beat this level for this video, I get it now. Rolling levels fucking suck. Far and away the hardest galaxy in the game. And the worst part? I did it all for nothing. I just had to get to the end of the course to check for water, but there's no water anywhere in this level. We're gonna die of dehydration. But honestly, I don't think the lack of water will be a concern for me, because after spending 75 minutes trying to get this fuck-ass star and failing over and over again, I'm jumping off and killing myself before I have have to spend another goddamn second in this place. So it's time to move on to Bubble Blast Galaxy, where the closest thing to water we have to drink is whatever the hell these bubbles are made out of. I honestly thought these were water at first until I remembered water typically doesn't have a rainbow sheen along the edges of it like this bubble does. Probably some space age soap or something. We're dying of dehydration here as well. But moving on to Loop de Swoop Galaxy, there's water aplenty. Just not much for us to eat. Loop de Swoop Galaxy is another one of those water race courses, and has all the same issues that the first one did. We have a few dozen fish who have nowhere to lay their eggs, and that's about it for us here. There's of course the little penguins, but the sexy one is here again. So as long as he's around, I don't think we're going to be getting away with killing his little friends. Assuming the big guy will keep helping us get in and out of the water, we'll make it about 2 weeks if we catch all the fish, and then slowly die of hunger after that. The best of the trial galaxies by far, but still not all that great. But with the trial galaxies covered, it's at long last time to head to the final galaxy in the game. Excuse me? Bowser's Galaxy Reactor. If you haven't figured out the pattern from all the other Bowser levels already, this is not going to be a particularly habitable place, but this is going to be the most habitable out of all of them. Now, assuming these tractor beams all over the galaxy work on the same principle as the launch stars, by which I mean magically and safely transport humans around rather than just slamming them into the ground, it is conceivable that you could make it to this platform here, which is covered in snow, next to a continuous source of snowfall. This is the only source of water in any of the Bowser levels. And since it's consistently snowing around this star somehow, that means it's renewable, baby. Now, the fact that it is snowing does mean that it's probably below freezing, so dressed as Mario, we will likely succumb to hypothermia in just a few hours. But once that happens, we can always just jump into the tractor beam here and safely move on to the next area, which I mean is a literal desert with no way back, so we will die of dehydration here. But as long as we drink our fill before we get here, we could at least make it another 12 hours or so. Not great, obviously, but it is a small step up from all the other galaxies where we've been dying of dehydration. And with the final level of the game covered, we actually still have 2 more we need to look at before we call it quits. You don't actually get to unlock all the galaxies in the game until you beat the game twice. But first, it's finally time to take a look at our level selection hub, the Comet Observatory. As we've already discussed, while we do have a nice source of water in the fountain, there does not seem to exist any food here. I mean, I make it sound like getting that water will be easy, but like this little light bridge doesn't appear until you get a few stars first. If we're going off of when Mario first gets here, you can't just walk up and get that water. Honestly, at first I thought we would be doomed right then and there, until I realized we don't have to go to the water if we can make the water come to us. If we just take some sticks from these trees and tie them together, we could then stick our shirts onto the end of it and use that shirt to absorb the water as it comes out of the fountain. Then just pull the stick back in and suck all the fluid out to stay hydrated. Hell, in the long run, we may even be able to use this tree to make a little bridge up to the fountain, allowing us to ditch the shirt stick entirely and just walk up there ourselves. Now then, the food. There isn't any. Not even in the kitchen. There's not even a fridge in the kitchen. There's just a kiln and 5 plates. Rosalina has 5 plates. What does she use the 5 plates for? Her and her 4 friends? I don't see any friends. Are the Luma her friends? Because she's got a billion fucking Luma here. How does she feed the Luma? Do they all just take turns using the 5 plates, or does she just throw star bits out and they eat it off the fucking floor like a cat that can explode into a planet? She either has 4 too many plates or like a 1,000 too few. Like, did Miyamoto seriously not consider the Rosalina plate logistics? Get it fucking together, man. Anyway, as far as food goes, we really don't have too much we can work with here. See these toads? They aren't even here when you first get to the Comet Observatory. I just forgot to record before they get here. All we got is the grass, this tree, Rosalina, and the Luma. So the biggest question we gotta ask here is, what does Rosalina eat? Believe it or not, I think we can actually answer that question. You see, when you go into this library, Rosalina will actually read an autobiographical tale she's written about her life to the Luma. This is 75% of the game's story, and it can be summarized in 4 or 5 sentences. Baby Rosalina finds a starship with a Luma, and they go to space together. Rosalina forgets that she needs to drink water to survive. I am dead serious. This is a plot point. She starts harvesting comets for ice, along with miscellaneous construction materials that are buried within that ice. Very convenient, I know. Finally, she decides to become a mother figure to the Luma race, and the very first Luma she ever met then transforms itself into the Comet Observatory so that they can all travel the galaxy together. Now, this story leaves us with a few questions that I think we can infer answers from. 1. Why did this Luma say that the Luma that turned into the comet was a real cutie of a comet? What is being implied here? Why is this Luma attracted to a comet? Do they fuck comets, Miyamoto-san? Where do Luma come from? Second, as we discussed earlier, while starbits are edible, Rosalina still is explicitly stated to need water and continuously bakes and consumes regular human food. So it can be implied that she can't live off of starbits alone, assuming that they provide any nutrition at all. So where is she getting this food? Remember when I said we needed to go out and explore the game before we could answer that question? Well, I believe we've already witnessed the answer. Rosalina is collecting starbits for the Luma to consume, and in return, the Luma turn into food for Rosalina to consume. She's eating her own adopted children. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but considering that Mario himself eats multiple Luma throughout the course of the game, it's an extraordinarily likely solution to the food situation. But we have a problem. None of these Luma appear ready to transform, and even if they are, since the Comet Observatory is stranded, we're not going to be able to collect starbits to fuel their transformations. This means we cannot rely on them for nutrition, and will instead need to focus on an alternative source. How many calories can you get from eating Princess Rosalina? First, we're going to need to figure out her size. Let's talk about Rosalina's feet. Where the fuck are they? I mean, I can see her toesies sticking out from the bottom of the dress, but she's floating, and I need to figure out where her heels are in order to figure out where her height starts. When I tried to make a guess as to where her heels are, and then stand Mario next to her for a height comparison, I got that she was about 242 centimeters tall, or 7 foot 11 inches. I don't think I got that measurement right. Like, she's tall, but not that tall. I was in fact so concerned with my estimate that I looked it up, and apparently she has an official height. I never need to measure anything from the start, but then I wouldn't have been able to find out that her feet are 8 inches longer than I thought they could be in even my most generous estimates. This girl has got some absolute fucking stompers on her. Either that, or either Mario or Rosalina are not portrayed here with their canonical height, which honestly would not surprise me, seeing as both have the ability to seemingly change their height at will. Let's just go off her official height of 7'3". It's just easier that way. Using her height, we can then estimate her weight using a weight height chart, except I couldn't find one that goes up to 7'3". Must not be a very common height. I did, however, find this calculator online that would give me a weight estimate, but it would also give me one for someone who's 23 feet tall, and I don't think doctors typically give out medical guidance for Nephilim, so take these weight numbers with a grain of salt. Now, Rosalina, bit of a scraggly old twig. Not a lot of meat on those bones. And with all that floating, I can't imagine she has too much muscle mass either. She's not unhealthily thin, but I'm going to be assuming she's on the lower end of the healthy weight range. So let's say she's around 200 pounds. Now on skinny women like this, body fat typically makes up about 15% of their mass, muscle about 30%, and her viscera and other edible mass around 40%, with the remaining 15% of her mass being composed of her skeleton, hair, and other inedible material. The nutritional breakdown of various human tissue is, as always, a disturbingly easy thing to find online, with all sources leading to very similar answers, allowing me to give a pretty firm estimate here as to how many calories we're dealing with. With her 80 pounds of organs giving us 15,011 calories worth of food, her 60 pounds of muscle giving us about 42,000 calories, and her 30 pounds of fat providing the lion's share of energy at 165,011 calories, for a grand total of 82 days worth of calories, assuming we eat 2,000 every day. And of course, since we're eating a human body, we already know that we'll have all the nutrients we need in order to fuel our human body. So, no need to worry about nutritional deficits. Now normally, preserving all this meat would be a serious issue, and it will be here as well. But you see that glowing orb in the back there? That's a fusion reactor. You know what, an artificial star, like that big thing in the sky that's hot as fuck. We can not only use this to cook our meat, but we can use the heat to dry it and create some jerky, allowing us to potentially keep it edible at room temperature for a prolonged period of time. Now I have no idea how long homemade jerky stays good for if you just leave it out on the spaceship floor like we'll be doing. I've read estimates online ranging anywhere from 5 days to 3 months. And I'm not going to be running this experiment in real life to see how long I can eat jerky off the floor before I get food poisoning. So, assuming we gorge ourselves all day, every day until this meat goes bad, we'll be lasting anywhere from 20 extra days at a bare minimum, all the way up to the full 82 we can get from finishing our girl dinner. It is, of course, assuming we could actually kill Rosalina. You know, the magic space witch who can turn herself 300 feet tall and crush our heads between her toes like a grape. So good luck with any of that. Maybe we can like go upstairs and drop a chair on her head or something, catch her off guard. But I honestly think we're going to be starving to death here without the privilege of having any food to eat at all. In fact, given the power dynamics at play here and the fact that, you know, she's also stranded here on the immobile spaceship, she might eat us first. But with that, we are done with every single location in Super Mario Galaxy, save for the secret level, the grand finale galaxy. You normally have to beat the whole game twice in order to access it and collect the final star. But remember, I wanted to evaluate all these levels as you first see them, and you don't see the grand finale galaxy for the first time at the end of the game. If you've never played this game before, or you've never beaten it 100%, the last galaxy in the game is actually just the Mushroom Kingdom, or specifically Toad Town and Princess Peach's Castle, where we started the game off. Now, normally, a peaceful little town full of water and friendly NPCs would be very easy to survive in, but this is not a peaceful town at all. 30 seconds after Mario shows up, so does Bowser's Air Force. And they are straight up killing people. Like, these aren't the slow falling fireballs that you see all over the Bowser levels where you can just walk to the side to get out of the way. Like, just try dodging this, I dare you. There's like a 50% chance we die right here. But if we can survive the invasion, we have ourselves a massive opportunity. Water is of course plentiful and easily accessible. And being in a town means we have access to all the comforts of mushroom civilization. All we have to do is integrate with society, which, as the only human in the Mushroom Kingdom following a devastating raid, we are uniquely positioned to do, for the toads are weak and not nearly as mobile as we are, meaning that when we volunteer our services to the rebuilding efforts, not only will we be immediately demonstrating our value to the community, but our superior strength and speed will provide us with a superior productivity in comparison to the other toads, cementing ourselves in their minds as a central, stabilizing figure during a trying time, fostering within them a certain sense of dependency upon us. They couldn't have rebuilt nearly as fast without us, and they'll be grateful. We will be accepted into society with open arms and celebrated as an everyday hero. As we don the adult diapers of the Toad people and integrate ourselves into their city and culture, we will live a Toad life and take a Toad wife. Our children? Abominations. Legs too stubby to be those of a human, and yet too long and graceful to be those of a toad. The other Toad children will no doubt bully them relentlessly, but that's their cross to bear, not ours. As we live as regular, yet highly respected citizens of Toad Town, working a normal job and living a comfortable life in what would likely be the best place in all of Super Mario Galaxy to live. Either that or my head gets blown off in the first volley of shots from Bowser's airships. But that's just a risk we're gonna have to take. And that's every galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy ranked based on survivability. Let me know if you think anything should be ranked differently, or if there's any games you want to see in the future. Remember to smack all the buttons under this video so I get recommended in the algorithm, including the hype button. I don't know what the hype button is, but hit that one the hardest. YouTube always rewards videos that interact with all their new features. And a very special thank you to all of my channel members and supporters on Patreon. Your kindness and generosity are as vast as the void of space, and I love you all. Alright, bye bye.